From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight, police in Abuja finally nabbed the suspected mastermind of the failed bank robbery in the Mpape suburb of Abuja, the nation's capital. The KWARA state government demolishes property belonging to the family of former Senate President Bukola Saraki in Ilorin. This for his early morning exercise as a way of avoiding confrontation. Federal High Court grants Economic and Financial Crimes Commission another 14 days to detain former AGF Muhammad Abductes pending his arraignment. An angry residents of fire-ravaged town in New South Wales heckle Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison over the government's response to crisis. Plus, business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index climbs to 58.3 in December in latest survey by FBN Quest, matching recent positive reading from the central bank.
And on sports news tonight, Arsenal defender Callum Chambers is set for a lengthy injury layoff after rupturing the anterior cruciate ligament of his left knee against Chelsea.
And from Abuja, workers in the nation's capital and some states yet to snap out of holiday mood, with low turnout recorded in government offices despite Yuletide ending.
It's a new year, and the police have swung into action. In Abuja, they've arrested the suspected mastermind of the Mpape bank robbery. Police in TARABA are also on the trail of the kidnappers of a traditional ruler, while in KATSINA state, 6 kidnapped victims have been rescued by the police from bandits in Batsari. But let's begin in Abuja, where a man suspected to be the mastermind of the failed bank robbery in the Mpape area has been arrested by the police. This brings the total number of suspects arrested in connection with the robbery to 5, besides the 6th who died in a shootout with the police. The name of the latest suspect arrested is ERNEST, who was picked up from his hideout in Katampe, a settlement close to the scene of the robbery. Meanwhile, one of the 4 suspects, a member of the bank's staff who was paraded on Tuesday, has described his earlier confessional statement of having acted under duress as false.
That Saturday where they do the robbery, Larry called me. He asked me if I know how to drive car. I said no, I don't know how to drive. He now said if I know anyone who can drive. I said yes, the person that used to carry me from work knows how to drive car. He now said can he meet the person? I said I'm not with the person, but I will call the person if you want. He now said okay. And I called the person. He said he would like to meet with the person. And I called the driver. So at a point, I know I will meet him in First Bank. So I say, okay, let's stop in. And I called the guy. I said, let's stop in First Bank. Yeah, you will see the guy. He now called back and said I should give the phone to the person. And I give the phone to the person. He now started, the two now talk. And I asked the driver, what did he say? He said if he can drive manual. That's all I know about the story.
Everything he said was true. The part of me meeting him, okay. From the part that I collected his number in the bank, I saw him, the way he looked, the tattoos on his body, I felt he was the best person to get me people, which I discussed with him that I needed people to help me come and collect money from the bank on a Saturday, and he said I should give him small time that he will get them. And he knows somebody, that the person used to be a soldier, and he knows that this person will be able to do it, and he gets people That was when he organized the meeting with me and him on the 24th or 25th. I already briefed him, so I didn't have much to tell him. What I just needed to tell him was how they will enter and how they made the mopo and other things that they need to do to be able to get the money, how they will take me to turn off the CCTV camera and how they would get to the ATM gallery to take the money.
You told us on Tuesday that
yes, I was afraid. Everything I told you was a lie. I was afraid. I just lied to you to save my head. This is the truth.
Police authorities say investigations are ongoing and the suspects will eventually be charged to court. Over in Taraba State, the police command has confirmed the kidnap of a traditional ruler of Dan Anacha, a suburb of Gasol local government area, who has been identified as Daniel Mbatalan of Tiv extraction. The monarch's abduction is the first recorded case in the year 2020, after the year 2019 recorded a total of 67 suspected kidnappers arrested, according to figures provided by the immediate past Commissioner of Police in the state, Al-Qasim Sanusi. According to the spokesman of the Taraba Police Command, Mr. David Misal, the tactics employed by the gunmen have been recurring as they accosted the chief and his younger brother on motorbikes at his residence on New Year's Day. While they took the traditional ruler to an unknown destination, they, however, let go of his younger brother. Mr. Misal adds that the police are making efforts to rescue the chief from his abductors unhurt. Meanwhile, the police in KATSINA State have rescued 6 kidnapped victims from bandits terrorizing Battery local government area. According to the state's police command, its officers responded to a distress call that the bandits, armed with AK-47 rifles, kidnapped some women working inside a farm at Mata Mulki village. The officers then gave the hoodlums a hot chase into the forest, engaging them in a gun battle and forcing them to abandon their victims before escaping into the forest. The team succeeded in rescuing a 16-year-old girl, Zaharau Abdullahi, and 5 other young women, all of Mata Mulki village of Batsari local government area. And less than 24 hours after the Nigerian Air Force announced the destruction of some structures and killing of several Boko Haram terrorists at Abulam camp in Sambisa Forest in Borno State, a terrorist group seems to be staging a comeback in neighboring ADAMAWA State. Gunmen suspected to be Boko Haram terrorists this evening attacked the administrative headquarters of Michka local government area. The insurgents reportedly attacked Kopa and Wurogeadi in the outskirts of Shua at about 7 p.m. That attack resulted in stampede as residents scampered for safety. The attackers were attempting to enter Michka but were repelled by local vigilante before the arrival of military fighter jets. Police have confirmed the reports but insist everything is now under control. Staying away from security, the KWARA state government has been explaining the timing of the demolition of structures on the controversial political meeting place of the Saraki family, known as Ile Arugbo, in Ilorin, the state capital, in the early hours of today. In a statement, the state's Commissioner for Communications, Murtala Olarinwaju, says the exercise was carried out at that time in order to avoid what he describes as needless confrontation. He adds that the attempt by some persons to provoke the state government into carrying out the demolition were resisted by security agents who exercised the highest level of restraint and professionalism. The property has recently been a subject of controversy between the KWARA state government and the former Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki. Mr. Olarinwaju also denies claims that the state government was served court papers on the matter to stay action on the demolition. And now to politics, where the leadership of the All Progressives Congress is insisting there is nothing wrong with the president's New Year message, which it describes as inspiring. And that's a position stated by the party's national chairman, Mr. OSHIOMHOLE, when he led some members of the APC National Working Committee to congratulate the president on the occasion of the New Year at the State House, Abuja. He also offered some clarification about the alleged third-term agenda.
there was nothing wrong, and we are indeed happy with the New Year message to Nigerians, because the responsibility of every leadership is to inspire hope. Life is sustained and driven by hope. And the challenge of leadership is not to join the people to lament that things are terrible, to give up and join the people in wallowing in self-pity. The responsibility of leadership is to inspire people, give them hope, and in this case, in line with the principle of accountability and democracy, democracy is not just about voting and everybody goes to sleep. It's about the leadership explaining periodically what he is doing, what he's going to do differently, and what he hopes to accomplish within a given time. And I'm surprised that there are people who wonder, why should the president reassure Nigerians that he's not going to do third term? Because third term was planted by PDP. It is still in the subconsciousness of most Nigerians that the first Nigeria president tried to do third term, emptied the treasury to bribe members of the National Assembly, and since that president left, thanks to the National Assembly, no any other president has done 8 years in office.
Election petitions kept the courts busy for the major part of the year 2019. But aside from these, a third arm of government also had to grapple with some issues of disobedience to its orders. In continuation of our assessment of critical sectors of the economy, we turn tonight our attention to Judiciary. Our Judiciary correspondent, Shola Shuele, reports that 2019 was a very eventful year.
The year opened with the unprecedented and controversial exit of the immediate past Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen. On the 23rd of January 2019, the Code of Conduct Tribunal ordered the suspension of Justice Onnoghen from office pending the determination of the charges of false assets declaration made against him. 2 days later, on the 25th, President Muhammadu Buhari swiftly obeyed the order and immediately swore in the next most senior justice of the Supreme Court as the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria.
I personally believe that it was politically motivated. If there's nothing to hide, the timing would be relevant because there's nothing to find. And therefore, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Though Justice Onnoghen was eventually convicted by the tribunal in April, he was, however, allowed to voluntarily retire from the bench by the National Judicial Council, NJC.
For the country, I think it's a triumph. It's a vindication of law. It's an example to those who administer law and justice in the country.
Another major judicial event in 2019 was the outcome of the presidential election petition filed by the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, against the winner of the February 23 election, President Muhammadu Buhari. On September 11, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, in a unanimous judgment, dismissed the petition. This decision was later affirmed by the Supreme Court in October 2019, with the new Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Mohammed, presiding. Apart from election-related matters, the court also dealt with other matters concerning politically exposed persons. Former Governor of Abia State, Orji Uzor Kalu, was convicted and sentenced to 12 years imprisonment for a 7 billion naira fraud. He has since challenged the judgment. Also worthy of note was the news of the award of $9.6 billion to a company, Process and Industrial Development, against the federal government by a United Kingdom court. The government has since challenged the judgment. Another judgment which many hailed as a landmark one is the one ordering the federal government to recover all pensions collected by former governors now serving as ministers and lawmakers at the National Assembly, The court subsequently adjourned till February 2020 for hearing on reports of compliance with the order. Talking about compliance with court orders, just before the year wrapped up, the government eventually obeyed the court orders and released Dasuki and Showore.
We can't afford to leave the judiciary at the mercy of the executive, which is what is happening. And I think part of the things that we need to do as a nation is just have strong institutions.
In this new year, the expectation is that all arms of government will work together to always uphold the rule of law. Shola Shuyeli, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, we continue our review of the year 2019, tonight with the Judiciary, the landmark cases, the challenges and the way forward. We'll be joined by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Akinsheye George. Stay with us.